Hello, hello! Welcome to another episode of Small Bites. I'm Dr. Karen McDowell, and today I am here to talk to you about getting comfortable with discomfort. Now, all month long at TGM, we've been talking about renewal and rebirth and growth, and all of those things are great, but they require a certain amount of discomfort. So as we're wrapping up the month and our series on those topics, I want to talk a little bit about what to do when you feel uncomfortable or how to think about discomfort as you engage in self-growth. I'm here today with my partner in Small Bites, Monique, who's interpreting for us, and you can catch her on Wednesday on our Instagram, where we do Small Bites live at noon Central Standard Time every Wednesday. And this week, Monique will be offering her thoughts on the topic that we're talking about today. Okay, so on a basic level, pain and discomfort are your body's alarm system. It's your brain's way of telling you something's wrong, there's a threat in the environment. And that's not a terrible thing. We do want to know when something might be dangerous to us or might harm us. But the problem is that alarm system is not very reliable. Sometimes the body misperceives the threat or misunderstands the threat. So you've probably experienced this when maybe a fly buzzes by and you jump. Well, your body has perceived it as an incoming threat, but it wasn't actually that big of a threat. And sometimes we misinterpret the body's response. So we may bump our shin and feel pain, and then we may think, oh my gosh, it means that my leg is broken and all these terrible things, and now my leg is ugly, and we have all these big reactions to it. That's us misinterpreting the amount of pain or the amount of discomfort that we experienced. So really, when we're talking about being comfortable with discomfort, we're talking about reframing or re-understanding discomfort and changing how we respond to it. So if you think about a child, if you think about a 5-year-old and they're running along and they fall down, often children look to the people around them to understand how they're supposed to interpret this. It's uncomfortable. They fell down. Ow. They look around. What does this mean? If the adults around them respond dramatically and they're like, oh no, you poor thing, and they go and and just everything's, oh, you're so fragile and you must be so hurt, this must be terrible. Very often the child will wail and cry and feel really terrible. And that is a way of teaching someone how to respond. When you bump your knee or when you fall down, we wail and we get hysterical because it means all these big, terrible things. Now, on the other hand, if the kid falls down and the parents totally ignore it, they don't do anything, they don't care, too bad, suck it up. Well, then the kid learns that pain is inevitable and that nobody cares and that nobody's going to help you if you're hurting. That's also not a great lesson to learn about pain. But we know that when people in the environment respond by saying, oh, I know that hurts and that's uncomfortable, and also you're strong and you're brave and you can get back up and you can keep going even though it's uncomfortable. Those are the kids that grow up to be able to manage discomfort, that are more resilient, that are better able to handle relationships because they've learned to interact with discomfort in a reasonable way. Now, as an adult, you have probably learned how to live with some manner of physical discomfort. You may stub your toe and still keep cooking dinner, or you may have a headache and still go to work. You're accustomed to coping with some level of physical discomfort from time to time. But throughout the lifespan, so little attention is given to emotional intelligence and emotional development, particularly in children, that it can be really difficult to know how to respond to emotional discomfort. Often people tell me that they experience emotional discomfort as really terrible and really just ruins their day or it ruins their life and just is a really awful experience. And yet these same people will go to the gym and work out, which is an uncomfortable thing, or they will agree to have surgery because they want an outcome from that, which is a very painful and uncomfortable process. And so it surprises me when people tell me that they can't handle emotional discomfort when they've learned so well to handle physical discomfort. So think about how athletes have a different relationship with physical pain than non-athletes. Now, you'll hear some of the language in athlete culture that's like, no excuses, keep going, no pain, no gain. The instilling of those ideas that the presence of pain does not necessarily mean something is terribly wrong. Now, if you break your leg, get off the field. That's a real problem. But if you've gotten a bruise, it doesn't mean that you're incapacitated. And athletes know this, and they work really hard to train themselves to respond to that. But similarly, athletes also have to manage the emotional discomfort, what it means to be performing a sport in front of people, what it means to make mistakes, what it means to fall down, to lose, to not do the right thing at the right time. Those are really uncomfortable experiences. But athletes learn to shake it off. They learn to keep going. They learn to show up anyway. And that's what I mean about reframing your relationship with discomfort. Not trying to escape it and not trying to wallow in it, but only seeing it for what it is and continuing on with the effort that you're making. So let's talk about some common areas of emotional discomfort. These are things that I see coming up with clients all the time. One of those areas is communication. And just like any other sporting event, communication means showing up into an arena with someone else. And that someone else may be on your team or they may not be on your team, but having to engage with them through discomfort is part of what communication means. Now, going into hard conversations, whether that means you're apologizing for something, you're asking for an apology, you are expressing hurt, or you're going into some kind of hard conversation, the brain is going to send you lots of danger signals. It's going to send you all kinds of thoughts and ideas and feelings that are telling you, don't do this, don't communicate with this person, this is a risk, this is dangerous. Now, you don't want to ignore danger completely, but you, again, do want to view it somewhat realistically. Another area of discomfort that's common for a lot of people is the discomfort of self-awareness or the discomfort of insight. When you start doing self-awareness work, it means looking at things that are uncomfortable, that you might not like about yourself, or things that you might have done in the past that you wish you could change. That's uncomfortable. And a lot of times people will avoid therapy, or they'll avoid insight work, or they'll avoid that kind of self-reflection because it means being uncomfortable. And again, I want to reiterate that you can still do the thing even when you're uncomfortable. Another area is change. Change is so uncomfortable, and yet we want it, we crave it. We are born to grow and change, and so our minds and our bodies are going that direction, and yet it's uncomfortable, and so sometimes we hold ourselves back from change because of that fear of that discomfort. So whatever it is you're changing, if you're changing a small habit, or if you're changing the kinds of people you have in your life, or you're changing a job, or whatever kinds of big changes you're making, as you start to make those changes, here comes the brain again saying, danger, oh my God, this is terrible. You'll never survive this. Everything is going to crash and burn. There's going to be all of these consequences. This change doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It's not good. Let's just go back to the way that things were before. And you have to be willing to hear that voice and also say, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to change. I'm going to make these changes in spite of this discomfort. Not ignoring it, not wallowing in it, just doing it anyway. Another area of emotional discomfort is boundary setting. Now, you know, I talk about boundaries all the time. We have the Boundaries Bootcamp course up on our website. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Love it. Setting boundaries and maintaining boundaries can be really uncomfortable. When you start to shift how you set your boundaries, other people have thoughts and feelings about that, and they react to that in certain ways, and that creates discomfort. If our instinct is to respond to discomfort with, never mind, forget my boundaries, never mind, then you're undermining your work and you're not going to find yourself growing into the kind of life that you want. So when you start doing boundary work, I always encourage you to find ways to be uncomfortable comfortably, to tolerate that discomfort. And the last area that I want to talk about is kids. Now, I used the example of the kid falling down earlier in the video. And I want to talk about that kid's discomfort, right? The kid falls down, they bump their knees, they're like, it hurts. And maybe they have a parent or somebody around. Well, that parent or somebody around may also have discomfort. They may see the child experiencing discomfort and want to stop that for them. part of that desire to stop the suffering of the child is also to relieve the discomfort of the parent. And so when we're working with kids, we have to sit with discomfort because we have to let them fall. We have to let them grow. We have to let them struggle. They need to be frustrated. They need to be, they need to make their way. They need to fight their way through. Now, I don't mean ignore the kid and just let them suffer no matter what. Not at all am I saying that. But when the child suffers in some way, they don't want to go to school, they fall down and they hurt, they have a fight with their friend, whatever it is that they're uncomfortable with, if you can manage your own discomfort and not try to rescue them as a way to manage your own discomfort, but instead sit with it and allow your child to go through that process, solve that problem, experience that hardship, and come through it. So if you can model a tolerance for discomfort, your child will also be able to handle discomfort, which means that they will be more resilient, they will be more able to achieve their goals, they will be able to connect and relate to people better, and they will have a much stronger sense of their own emotional intelligence. So those are some of my thoughts on discomfort. And I want to remind you that accepting and sitting with discomfort has a lot to do with your self-talk. What kind of narrative, what kind of beliefs and self-talk do you have about that discomfort? So for example, if say you have to have a hard conversation and in your head, the self-talk is, this is going to be terrible. I can't do this. They're going to be mad at me. I won't be able to express myself. You got a lot of negative self-talk, negative chatter in your brain. Try to stop that chatter and replace it with, I can get through this. It is okay for this to be uncomfortable. This may not go well, but I will handle it. I will do the best I can. Communication is important to me. These kind of positive affirmations or these positive thoughts, replace those. Begin to notice when you feel uncomfortable and what your reactions are to that. If you notice that when you feel uncomfortable, you immediately pull back from whatever it is, start practicing staying in that discomfort. Maybe start with something mild, like if it's uncomfortable for you to, let's say you get your food at a restaurant and it's made wrong and you feel uncomfortable asking for them to fix it, maybe that's a nice, low impact place to start, staying with your discomfort and doing it anyway. And then kind of see how you might incorporate these ideas into those topics that I mentioned earlier, communication, boundary setting, those kinds of things. And I'm going to end on this. You can do hard things. You can be uncomfortable and do things anyway. I know that you can because you are a living, breathing human, which means that you have suffered and you have survived. You can do hard things. Get out there, sit with your discomfort, and see what it brings to your life. Once again, I'm Dr. Karen McDowell, and it is my pleasure to be part of this Small Bites program. We look forward to seeing you on Wednesday at 12 Central Standard Time on Instagram Live, so we can talk more about this topic and hear what you think. Be sure and like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff really helps us, supports our mission, and helps us provide outreach to people who need it. Catch us at thegraciousmind.com or on any social media platform, and we'll see you next week on Small Bites.